Welcome back. Well, today I'm joined by Paul Ingles, who is the Tulsa project manager for RadNet. And we were fortunate enough to talk to Dr. Princenthal not too long ago regarding this treatment. And Paul is in charge and he can answer pretty much all your questions about it. So thank you for joining me, Paul. I hope that's not too much pressure.
Thank you. Terrific introduction. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Now, I know this has not been on the market super long. How did you come across it?
Well, we began looking at it when it was in clinical trials in Europe about 5 years ago. And then in 2017, they initiated clinical trials here in the US. And some of those trials were conducted right in our local backyard at UCLA. And the clinical trials looked very promising as terms of a new option to treat prostate disease. And it piqued our interest because our core business is the diagnostic imaging arena. And when we think about diagnostic imaging, Lisa, you know, how do we enhance that and add a possible treatment phase to this program? And essentially what it is we came up with this Tulsa program, but the data looked really exciting in terms of a new offering for treating a prostate disease.
Well, and that's exactly what Dr. Princenthal was referring to. I mean, he seems quite positive that it is a great alternative out there for those that fall within that particular category of men. Tell me how non-surgically alternative it is used for prostate issues, just briefly. I mean, he was great and gave us a whole chart and stuff, but from your perspective.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to overload you with data detail here today, but you know, it's really exciting because it's an incision-free option that really combines real-time MRI imaging with directional thermal ultrasound. The thermal ultrasound delivers waves transurethral directly into the prostate and thermally ablates the tissue in the gland, meaning that the prostate tissue is destroyed from the heat.
Right.
And I think that's one of the really revolutionary aspects of this. You know, the current options used today are radiation, both external and beam and HDR or high dose rate brachytherapy techniques, robotic surgery, you doing complete gland removal, and hormonal therapy or chemotherapy. So this offers a terrific option because it's an outpatient delivered program. It takes about 4.5 hours. So a patient literally comes in the morning and is out by noon. And most of these other techniques don't afford that option. And it certainly is a one treatment type of resolution to this prostate disease.
Well, exactly. And also the recovery time is remarkably shorter. And you're back to doing what you've been doing before. And
that's correct. Yes, very little impact on our daily lives. And one of the significant benefits that they measure through the clinical trials and what we've seen out of Europe is the preservation of a men's natural functions. I think that's one of the most, the biggest takeaways that when I was looking at this clinical data is that the preservation of a man's natural functions post a robotic prostatectomy the risk is very high of those occurrences. And with Tulsa, the experiments or the testing data shows that there's been very little impact on quality of life for men.
That's awesome. That is great. What would be some of the top 2 questions that you normally get from a patient?
Well, I think number one, they're looking at how do you do this non-surgically? You know, I think that's one of the big questions. You can see the videos and you can look at our website that kind of describes the workflow and how this treatment is performed and brought about. But you know, that's one of the questions is how do you do it? What am I experiencing when I'm going in for this treatment? What can I expect? That's number one. I think the second is you know, the preservation of a man's male functions. You know, those are the 2 probably significant questions that I get, especially from the clinical side. They've done their research. They've looked at these options. And, you know, they find this option to be very interesting because it's delivered on an outpatient basis, minimal impact, no incisions or wound issues to deal with, and they're excited to learn more about it.
Now, unfortunately, because it is fairly new here, insurance really doesn't cover it. So is that going to change, do you think? I mean, I know that there's stuff in place with legislature and hopefully that'll change, but what do you think?
Well, just so you know, I mean, C codes have been applied for this approach of treatment. And it's a combination of many codes, because there's a delivery of anesthesia, there's nursing care, there's the treatment itself, the ablation process, the real-time imaging component, and the recovery process for each and every patient. But the key aspect of this is that you also have the pre and the post-treatment care provided by the urologist that's providing the treatment to the patient. Mm-hmm. And so this complexity of codes is going to take some time to flush out. You know, if you recall 20 years ago when robotic prostatectomy and the Da Vinci system was first coming out, it was well over 6 years before codes were placed behind that treatment. Mm-hmm. And people were paying a very large sum of cash to have this treatment, that removal available to them. Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, it's going to be a few years until we feel that there will be substantial coding and reimbursement values placed behind this treatment. So it could take a few years, but we're very optimistic that the results have been so positive. The patient feedback from the urologist's perspective, the patient's perspective has been so positive. I think there'll be a very good carrying momentum to help us get codes within the next few years. Certainly isn't going to be the lengthy amount of time we've seen with some other tech becoming available to bill our insurances for that. Currently it is set up as a cash rate program, and we have it set up as a care continuum program. So it includes the urology services for the pre-care, the treatment, as well as the post-care of the patient, and all of the facility services and the technology, all for one fee.
That's awesome. And, you know, I wish that insurance companies would come around a little quicker, because it certainly would benefit so many people. And especially because you don't necessarily have to come back to have anything fixed. I mean, it's kind of like you said, a one-time thing, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And, you know, the really remarkable thing about adding the imaging component, we can confirm the ablation of that disease within the gland. I mean, with 100% confidence, we're watching the ablation of that disease within the capsule, and we're able to really see it and ensure that we've destroyed all of the disease impacting that gentleman's gland.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. That's perfect information. Just out of curiosity, Paul, how long have you been with RadNet?
For many years. I hate to admit, but I've been with the company for many years. I'm excited to be part of a really leading edge technology program that RadNet has entrusted, you know, our team to kind of come up with the concept and integrate it into our operations. We do plan to have several facilities in Southern California over the next, year to 18 months. But our first one is open and operating at Liberty Pacific Advanced Imaging in West Hills, which is in the north end of the San Fernando Valley. Right. Really exciting. We've been able to deliver really positive treatments and provide men with this option. It's worked out very well so far.
Yeah, but one thing we didn't actually talk about is that RadNet is the only one on the West Coast that's doing that. So of course, your first place in West Hills. So everybody would be very excited to know when you're going to be coming here to Laguna Hills.
Well, I think probably within the next 12 months or so, we'll have our facility in Orange County open and operating, providing services. We're very excited about that, yes.
Great. Great. Of course, they could always drive up there. That's not that far. And then you said obviously the recovery time is very minimal. So
yes, the traffic hasn't been so bad recently. So yes, it is a decent commute, but certainly it's not out of touch. I mean, we have patients coming from Washington State, Idaho, Colorado, Mississippi, all parts of the Western U.S. And people from the Pacific Rim countries have been reaching out for more information since this technology is available to them in their countries. So but due to some of the COVID processes and restrictions that we currently have, we're living and working within the framework of those guidelines right now. But yes, it's certainly not too inconvenient for a patient that might reside at West Hills and have their treatment performed. but we will have another facility opened up in Orange County, hopefully within the next 12 months or so.
Excellent news. Now, if someone wants to know more information about this particular procedure, where would you send them?
Well, absolutely. There's a variety of ways to reach us. We do have a centralized phone line that they can contact. It routes directly to me. I do my best to speak with every single patient that reaches out for more information about the Tulsa program, or even about the MRI, the prostate MRI program that we have launched. And we also have an email. So you could email tulsaprostate@radnet.com. You can visit our website. Terrific amount of information that is really helpful to the patients. Provides you an overview of the program. A lot of good information there. And that website is prostate.radnet.com.
Perfect. Well, that is awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me and explaining about this fantastic alternative for all the men out there that are experiencing this type of ailment. So I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so much for the opportunity to tell you more about our program.
You're welcome. And we'll be right back after this.